Okay, it is 6:30, so I will call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It is Monday, May 8th, 2023, and we are in the OSD Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak?
Here.
Dr. Bush?
Here.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Ms. Flanagan?
Here, board does have a quorum, and Ms. Wright will be a little bit late because her children have the concert at FAS, so she'll join us in a little bit. I do have proof of notice, so this meeting has been posted by Ms. Heights, so we are good there. On our agenda tonight, we have our normal information items. We have 3 action items, and then the board will be going into closed session at the conclusion of this meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. All right, we have a motion and a second. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. So we do have a list of updated resignations at your spot. We do also have a field trip that we are approving, and then I will read the following donations. From Quick Trip, we have bananas with an estimated value of $50 for the FES dinner and a book event. We have $150 from the FES PTO for snacks for dinner and the book event. We have $100 from Anna Seidenstreicher for A-Team Scholarship. We have $20 from Laura Brunold for the OMS German Club New Glarus Field Trip. $150 from Christine Hoffman for the OMS German Club New Glarus Field Trip. $50 for the A-Team Scholarship from Dan Hilgartner. $500 from Fidelity Charitable for NKE PTO. We have $100 from Erica Mundinger for the A-Team Scholarship. $100 from John Tanner for the A-Team Scholarship. $500 from Summit Credit Union for the Summit Credit Union Scholarship. $10 from JL General Contractors and Josh Papp for the OMS 7.0 Urban Challenge. $400 from Thomas Miller for the Oregon Swimming Pool, $300 from the Oregon PTO for the Kindergarten Field Trip Transportation, and then $100 from Gina Jonan for the A-Team Scholarship. So we thank all those individuals and those entities for their donations to the Oregon School District to support our students. We are very thankful for those. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, any discussion on the consent calendar? Any abstentions? Okay, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Moving on to B, information items. We do have people here for public comment, so I will read the policy associated with public comment. District Policy 180.05 provides an opportunity for the public to address the board. We value the public comment period and feedback from our stakeholders. To comply with open meetings law and to ensure consistency, public comment will have the following parameters. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to make their comments. Ms. Katie Heights will signal the speaker when their time is up. The board will not comment after each speaker and will reserve discussion to any items on the agenda. Speakers are welcome to stay for the entire meeting. Next steps following public comment may include referral to the appropriate administrator for follow-up with the speaker or placement of the matter on a future board agenda. So when I call your name, you can come up to the microphone here and state your name, state your address so we know that you live in the district, and then you'll have 3 minutes, okay? Okay, first up is Josh Klein. You can just flip the switch there, and then the floor is yours.
Big question. What if you don't live in the district?
You are not allowed for public comment at our
Okay.
meeting. Sorry, it's that's okay. Sorry. You can write a letter to the board or send an email to the board if you so choose. All right, next up is Laura Shateda. Is that correct? Did I pronounce that?
Close.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead and state your name and your address. All right, thank you. Next up, Bill Hendrickson.
I thought it was an attendance thing, sorry.
Oh, okay, it's all right if you don't want to speak.
Good to observe, but thank you though.
All right, next up is Chad Grossen.
Thank you. Chad Grossen, 866 Sumac Street. I have my son plays lacrosse. He is a sophomore this year. So in elementary school, my son wanted to try playing lacrosse. And in his first year, he was hooked. From his first game in 4th grade to the games he now plays as a sophomore, he likes the energy, athleticism, and skill of playing lacrosse. Most of all, it's the camaraderie and friendships that he has made with his fellow teammates. Since his first year of playing, he has been playing with a number of fellow schoolmates and teammates from other schools. Over the years, my wife and I have watched our son and his fellow teammates grow and improve in the sport together. Every member on the Panther lacrosse team is proud to wear the orange and black of the Oregon Panthers on their uniform. Every lacrosse family has invested in the program's growth and success, especially the players and their families of the area schools that are part of the program. The investment these families have made to keep the team members together should not go unnoticed. From coaches, volunteers, and sideline support, they have represented the Oregon community proudly. I am grateful that you, the school board, is considering the addition of lacrosse as a sanctioned sport at the high school level. As a taxpayer, I fully support the addition of the sport, as well as keeping the team together as a co-op program. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is Rebecca Gill.
My name is Rebecca Gill, and I live at 280 Robinson Road in Oregon. So my name is Rebecca Gill, and I'm the captain of the girls varsity lacrosse team. I'm here today in support of my team in the future WIAA changes. I'm looking forward to becoming a WIAA sanctioned sport, and as part of that, I know a co-op is being proposed. Currently, we have a freshman athlete, oh my God, who attends Monona Grove.
It's okay, take your time.
You got it. No. You can.
If you'd like somebody to read it for her, that's fine too.
Equally as passionate. I'm Brian Gill, her father. So, I am here today in support of her team, and she does support the WIAA, and she's looking forward to becoming WIAA sanctioned support. As a part of the co-op being proposed, they have a current freshman athlete who attends Monona Grove. The proposed the proposed co-op doesn't include Monona Grove as part of this co-op now. I would like to ask the school board to consider adding Monona Grove to the co-op agreement. There are several reasons for this. First, the population size. The Oregon co-op represents approximately 4,000 students, whereas the Madison area co-op represents about 9,000 students. Adding Monona Grove to the Oregon co-op would help offset the differential. Furthermore, Oregon and Monona Grove already co-op for girls hockey. This would provide more consistency for the multi-sport athletes. Giselle is the student from Monona Grove, has expressed the desire to continue playing for the Oregon girls lacrosse team and stay a part of our lacrosse family. A point that could be brought up is that Monona Grove, a point that could be brought up is that Monona Grove has a athlete playing girls lacrosse for West Side, which is a different team. She is a senior and will not be affected by the co-op changes this year. This means that Giselle would be the only athlete impacted by the changes from Monona Grove not being part of our co-op. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Okay, moving on. We went through the list. Oh, that's from a different, they don't live in the district. No, now that we're in person, we only take public comment in person. Okay, moving on to 2 OEA reporters. Anyone here from the OEA that wishes to speak? Okay, thank you. A student report. Nate, you have the floor.
Alrighty, thank you. Not too much has changed since last meeting. Prom coming up this weekend. Everybody's excited. In downtown Madison, May 13th. AP tests are kind of wrapping up now. We've been through most of them. AP Calc was today with some Spanish and French culture tests as well. AP Bio is coming up as kind of a big one. That's a super term-heavy class, so lots of studying I'm sure is going on tonight. Within Student Council, we have Puppy Yoga that happened this past Saturday here at OHS. Just to kind of bring up spirits towards the end of the year and have some fun projects for us to work on. And coming up mid-May is going to be our pet adoption fair. So also at OHS, pending approval, we'll have a fair where working with Fetch, a company that Sadie, our student council president, her mom is a part of that company. So we're kind of co-oping there to bring some dogs here and just kind of have a community mixer for people to walk around and enjoy the nice weather. And then in orchestra, there's a concert on Thursday. And you might have noticed the fancy costume, but there's going to be lots of costumes as there are some Pixar-themed songs, and I believe there's Jurassic Park too, so there's going to be some fun stuff there. As well as the fun costumes, there's going to be senior night coming up too, where orchestra every year will pay respects to the seniors of this year and have a nice show for that. That's about it.
All right, great. Lots going on toward the end of the school year. Thank you, Nate. Okay, moving on to C action items. Number 1 is the addition of lacrosse to the OSD athletic department. I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. This evening, we will be, meaning the administrative team, will be proposing to the board the approval of 2 co-ops, a boys and a girls co-op for lacrosse. And our athletic director, Brittany Spencer Grant, will share some details.
All right. Good to see you all again. 2 meetings in a row for me. Okay, so on the purple sheet, I'm not going to go through everything. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to kind of glance through it, but I will give you a few highlights. So new next year is going to be the sport of lacrosse on both the boys and girls side, sponsored by the WIAA. It was approved this past year, so next year is going to be the first year where it's actually implemented. So schools like ours are kind of making decisions as to whether or not they're going to sponsor the team and whether or not they're going to have a co-op or if they're just going to have a standalone program. I'll kind of fast forward a little bit. Our recommendation tonight is going to be to not only sanction the team or the sport, but to do so as a co-op. Right now, we're anticipating anywhere from 35 to 40 teams across the state is kind of some of the early projections. Schools have until June 1st to actually declare if they're going to sponsor the sport and if they're going to do so as a co-op. So we'll know more in kind of the coming days, but everybody has that June 1st deadline to kind of get that information up to the WIA. As a conference, we're going to do a little bit of catch up once we know then which teams are actually sponsoring teams. It's looking like there's probably going to be about 5 to 6 schools from within the Badger Conference. So what we're going to do then is decide, are we going to have a conference schedule amongst ourselves? Are we going to be looking to maybe piggyback and join with another local conference? How are those games going to be figured? But we do kind of have our rules from our governing body, the WIA, so we know we can play up to 18 games in the season. So it'll just be a matter of kind of building a schedule from there. We'll start at the conference level, and then we build out with the non-conference games from there to fill it. You know, a little bit about kind of the history of the program. Our partners with Oregon Youth Lacrosse, many in attendance tonight. We've been really fortunate to kind of work closely with them. A lot of the data that you see in the purple sheet before you actually comes from them in terms of participation numbers, some of their projections, and I've been fortunate to receive some of their financial information to help kind of put this together with some of our projections, because I truly have no clue what this will actually cost us as a school district, but having their numbers and their finances as a guide really kind of helped put the data together that's in Table A within the packet itself. Within the program at the club level, there are actually students between the boys and the girls programs from not only Oregon, but also Broadhead, Evansville, McFarland, and Stoughton. Those 5 schools, including us, is what we are proposing as co-op member schools. Currently on the girls' side, there's not participants from all of them, but we have interest from the schools in being involved. The next level is actually that they need to go to their own school boards to also get approval. So it's possible that if the vote here tonight is favorable, that one of those school boards could say no. They didn't expect that to happen, but it is certainly possible. So these are the schools that we would like to extend an offer to in terms of joining our team. Let's see, what else do I want to share with you tonight? Currently, our girls team practices just over on village property next to the ice rink. The plan would be, with permission from the village, for the girls team to continue to practice there. Our boys team is currently kind of sharing space. A lot of times they'll sometimes be out in Brooklyn. Sometimes they actually purchase or rent space up in Fitchburg. A lot of the youth lacrosse is still played down in Brooklyn, which will probably stay. And then we actually would want to play some of our home games out here right at Panther Stadium, or what people commonly refer to as the football field. So we would look to use that as our game field when it's weather friendly. The nice part about being a potential co-op is that we could gain some access to some field space in some of our surrounding communities. There are new turf fields, not only in Stoughton, but in McFarland too. So with those schools as part of our co-op, we could look to possibly reschedule games there, or even get a few games in those communities if that worked out with the scheduling piece. The other part with our boys program, we would probably move them onto OHS property for their practices. We would put them out back here on what's referred to as the practice football fields. Those are used a little bit for track and field, so we just need to kind of shift off to the side to make sure they're not being hit with a shot put or a disc. But there's plenty of space out in that field for both programs to be able to work collaboratively in that space. Some of the benefits that we see with bringing this on, we see having this school sponsored as being an opportunity for kids to gain access to the sport that they maybe didn't otherwise have. We anticipate the expense to be minimal. For the individual, for the user, they would need to provide some equipment. But otherwise, transportation and all that would be provided by us as a school district, just as we're doing with all of our other school-sponsored sports. They'd have the opportunity to sign our code of conduct. So they'd be held to kind of the same expectations and standards as their peers, sitting next to them in any given class. They'd have an opportunity to earn a letter. I know that was one of the highlights that one of the kids was telling me about, it would mean a lot for her to have the opportunity to earn an Oregon letter, as she's not currently participating in any other sports with us. With that comes some, increased recognition. I put out posts weekly on Twitter with, the events that are coming up. So I'd love to be able to add lacrosse to that list of our OHS sponsored activities for the week, and to kind of share those throughout our community. And then if we are approved at the Badger Conference level too, that would open up some opportunities for conference championships, all conference teams, and things like that. So just additional opportunities to recognize our kids for the awesome things that they're doing. So just a little bit there at the end on some next steps. So we need to kind of make a decision here tonight, and then the other schools potentially involved with the co-ops would need to go to their school boards for some potential approval. We've got that looming deadline of June 1st where our application needs to get up to the WIA. And then we'll work with other conference schools to figure out what is that conference schedule, and then build non-conference schedules from there. And that'll be kind of some ongoing work throughout the summer until we're ready to kind of hit the ground running and have our inaugural season then hopefully next spring.
Okay, what I'd like to do now is I want to turn over to Andy to talk about finances a little bit, and then we will talk clarifying questions. So we won't move into a motion or support or not of the proposal, because this is new. I want to leave time for clarifying questions if that works for everybody on the board. So let's first go to Andy in terms of finances.
Sure. So at this time, we are projecting a little bit of a surplus left over at this for this fiscal year. So our proposal right now is to take some of that remaining funds for this year and put that aside to fund it for next year, because we're a little late in to build that to next year's budget. But then the following budget, which would be the 24-25 budget, we would plan to build that cost into the budget for the following year.
Okay, and then before we open up the floor, came up in public comment. I would like you to address the Monona Grove question, or Dr. Bergstrom, if you want to address that off the bat.
Yeah, so our current understanding is that Monona Grove has plans to partner with the Madison team, as was mentioned in one of the comments. It would be Edgewood, Monona Grove, and the 4 Madison schools is our understanding. I have not had any communication with Monona Grove, being wanting to join our co-op at the school level, I should say.
So in order for a Monona Grove athlete to participate in this co-op, the school has to join the co-op. So it's really the school decision.
Correct.
So, okay. Just want to make sure that that's clarified.
Yeah, that's a little bit different than the current club model, as I understand it. At the club level, if their school doesn't actually sponsor it or offer it, or their community, I should say, they can go to kind of the next closest team. So that is going to be a change kind of within the sport of lacrosse, is that the school has to be involved on the front end for those students to participate.
And we would entertain Monona Grove entering our co-op if they so desired?
I would be open to exploring it.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I'm going to open the floor for clarifying questions. Who would like to go first? Mary, go ahead.
So I noticed that it says...
Your microphone.
Thank you for the reminder. It says that the initial agreements would be for 2 years, and then we would reevaluate to see if standalone teams would be an option. The question I have for you then is, with Oregon making 75 to 80% right now, and the possibility of draw because it becomes a WIAA sport, what would happen if we had enough for a standalone team? What would happen to the athletes that are from the other school districts?
So once you sign into a co-op agreement, you're actually bound to it for those 2 years, or there are some kind of ramifications. The big one that they use is that you can't compete in the tournament series if you break your co-op agreement. So that's not something we would want to do. We would want to kind of stick with it for those 2 years. And then if we chose not to re-explore the co-op, I think then, you're in the green to kind of proceed. The hope is that maybe it is just a 2-year agreement and our numbers internally are good enough to sustain our own, but also that the other schools involved have their own numbers to start another team. That's kind of the co-op philosophy, is that you kind of start together and then you break apart to grow the sport.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I think it was on this side. Was it Leslie? Were you next?
Yeah, but I've now changed my question, so it works. Explain to me on our cost chart, what encompasses event workers?
So that would be potentially like a ticket taker, a supervisor, those sorts of workers. One of the things that we would probably look to utilize or ask help of is of our parents to kind of help us with some of those game duties that we as a school need to learn. I don't know anything about working the table at lacrosse, so I would lean on our lacrosse community to educate me and others to kind of get on board with what we need.
That was sort of going to be my next question about how much community involvement are we going to do with that? And is that cost assuming we would get that community involvement, or is that cost assuming that we would need to pay for that?
That rough estimate would involve roughly 3 to 4 school staff per event was kind of where I came up with that. It's actually probably a little bit on the high end if we do have some of that parental help and support, which I think they're more than willing to give us.
And then transportation, how many games, trips in a season? What are we talking?
So 18 games in a season, we'd figure probably roughly half of them would be home games. So then we'd be transporting roughly 9 games.
And that's
some of them would be local. Some of them are probably a little bit further. I know our teams have existing relationships with teams out of the Milwaukee area, so they'd probably want to maintain some of those non-conference games on the schedule.
okay. And does that double because it's boys and girls, or is that 18 total?
18
with
per
boys
gender.
and girls. Oh,
Yep.
per gender.
Yep.
Thank you very.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think Anna was next, and then Heather.
Yeah. Just a couple additional clarifying questions. First, with the transportation piece, how does that work with a co-op when we have different schools? Are some of the students then bused to Oregon and then they leave from here, or how does that work for that transportation piece?
So good question. So right now, there actually is transportation provided for the boys team. What they're doing is they're actually sending a bus to Stoughton and picking up those kids. Our recommendation would not be to do that with potentially 4 other schools. It would be a trip in and of itself to go and pick up all those kids. So our recommendation would be to have those kids transported here. Whether the school district itself is going to decide to allow them to transport, that would be up to kind of the individual school district. So Stoughton would make a decision as to how those kids would get here. In New Glarus, we had a lot of co-ops. So I was on both sides of this, whether I was hosting them or I was sending kids. Sometimes we would provide a shuttle in the form of a school van, but other times they would self-transport and we would just have them kind of sign a waiver for the transportation. So we would do all pickups out of here, out of OHS, and it would be a matter of the other school districts determining how those kids were going to get to our building.
That's helpful. Thank you. Another, I guess, question as far as the next steps. Do we know if we would have, do we know if there's interest in coaching the high school team, or would that be an opportunity for staff to be considered, or would we be looking to outsource that? Have you thought at all about that?
So potentially there are several coaches currently on board and employed at the club level. So once we do sponsor it, we would have to post our positions, and I would hope there would be some current club coaches who would be interested in applying for those positions, but then we would go through the process of hiring and whatnot to fill them.
Great, thank you. And then I guess I just wanted to clarify with Andy the one-time funds or the excess funds, that would fund the year one startup, which includes the initial purchase of uniforms and those sorts of things. And then, so that's like a $61,000 investment if I do the math. And then ongoing, recurring, it's about $50,000 to run both of those programs. And that's
Correct.
something that would be built in to the budget.
We'd build it into the 24-25 budget, correct?
Okay. And then can you help me understand, is it the Boosters Club that funds things like the posters for the seniors and all the special things that kind of go along with that? Or is that something that's done through district funds?
I know how my kids did it. I'm not sure how they would.
Tell me more. No, a lot of times, so we have kind of Fund 21, where any team that does some of their own fundraising, their funds go into that. So it's housed at the school district, but it's not part of our annual budget cycle. So those funds carry from year to year. So when youth baseball hosts a camp or a clinic, those excess funds go into that Fund 21. And so they use those funds to help pay for senior banners and posters and things like that.
Okay.
There are a couple sports who do ask the families to pay for those expenses. So that would be something that lacrosse would decide, in the beginning, maybe it is something that they're asking the families to help cover.
Okay.
But that's something we'd have to work out.
Okay. Those are my clarifying questions. Thank you.
Awesome.
Heather, you're up.
Yep, my question is just on the numbers. So piggybacking on what Anna said, the first year cost, that is for the total co-op, or that's for the total co-op?
Yes.
And so then I know that I did read that it's hard to estimate because there are other schools, but I'm going to ask you to estimate anyway, based on current numbers of how, if today all of these schools were involved, what would Oregon's piece of the pie be of that?
So we have roughly about 80% of the participants are OSD students, athletes.
Mm-hmm. Troy, you're up.
So I guess back to the costs, need a little clarification there. So, I mean, everything has a cost. And in the write-up, you said that we would build ongoing costs into the athletic budget. So does that mean that our overall athletic budget would remain the same, or are we looking at a potential $50,000 increase on an annual basis?
Look, based on the look that Brittany's giving me,
More money.
I'm gonna go that would be an increase.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay. And then my other clarifying question is, why wouldn't the boys practice down at the field by the ice arena instead of on the track and field discus area?
Well, it's a big enough space that we could utilize multiple teams out there. So the idea was that both teams could be practicing at the same time. The girls team, if they were down at the ice rink field, the village field, and then the boys team up here. This is the bigger of the two spaces, is the practice football field. So I put the bigger program there in my estimations, but we could also, potentially flip flop depending on the dates. I would hope that our coaches could work collaboratively together to kind of schedule as needed.
Gotcha. And then one final question is, we don't have a co-op contract yet. We would write that after tonight's meeting if it were approved, correct?
Yes, that would be the plan. We have a model in our girls hockey one that we could kind of use and build off of.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Caleb, did you have any questions?
Most of them have been.
Okay, Anna, back to you.
I meant to ask this. Are both girls and boys the same season? That's not like
Spring.
Okay, they're both spring sports. Okay.
A couple questions from me. One is looking at the cost differential with boys and girls. I'm assuming that that's because there's an extra JV team for the boys. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I'd like you to elaborate, or maybe, this is Dr. Bergstrom too, just in terms of code of conduct. We haven't hosted a co-op before. We joined one. And so can you speak to me about, we have a kid from Evansville, and what we expect of them? Are their parents signing our code of conduct? And then do we have an agreement within the co-op agreement with the school in terms of that and what happens? So we're not putting penalties on the kid. That school district's putting the penalty, but that will match our school district?
Yep. So typically all the co-ops that I've been involved with, the students are held to their school's code of conduct. So that's kind of the agreement when you join into it is that you're agreeing to uphold your code. So any issues would get communicated to myself and to the coach, and then we would help if there was a game that needed to be served. We would make sure that game was served and those sorts of things. I could see us putting a line into the contract just about that, just reminding people to make sure that their code is upheld and that any issues need to be communicated to the host school, something along those lines.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm getting too in the weeds here, but if we look at a first offense here and it's 25% of the season, is that married so that our kids are held to the same standard, meaning somebody else, if it's that's 4 games, that for Evansville, that's only 1 game, and for our kids, that's 3 games, for example?
That'd be something we'd need to look at to compare the different codes. It's not something I've done yet.
Okay. And then next question has to get with cost, and kind of to Troy's point that, we are funding the startup and then looking at second year costs, and I know you'll kind of divvy that out with schools. I wonder if there's an opportunity with Evansville and Stoughton in terms of working into costs associated with fields, and if that's something that potentially would be part of an agreement in terms of lessening the cost for a kid from Stoughton if we have access to that field. I mean, looking at our overall cost, and does it make sense for us to barter something with that school district that brings our overall cost down, and that is a benefit to that student from Stoughton? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. The opportunity to be creative about this co-op agreement that looks at the bottom line.
I like it.
Okay. All right. Any more clarifying questions? Dr. Bergstrom, do you want to?
I don't have any questions. I'll wait until we get to the next phase because I'd like to add some information.
All right. I will entertain a motion on the floor. Is there a second? All right. We have a motion and a second, and we'll open up discussion. I'll start with Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. I just want to point out to the board that this is really step 1 in a much broader process, because what we are seeing, what the AIRS report told us, and what Brittany's data collection has told us, is that sports participation or athletics participation for our students is increasing significantly over the last 5 years, and that's wonderful. We want our students involved in healthy co-curricular activities. It makes everything about their educational experience enhanced. It's an important part of what high school can be for students. But with that increase in student participants, the increase of use of our fields and other facilities, we are going to start to feel the pinch budgetarily related to the cost of having more students involved, related to the cost of maintaining more field space because we're adding in additional opportunities for students. So this is step 1, a very important step. Clearly this is something that a lot of students and families want very much, but big picture, it's only the first step connected to a broader strategy about facilities and student participation and how to really marry that into a healthy long-term plan.
All right, thank you. Floor is open for discussion. Go ahead, Leslie.
So I'd like to say I think that this is an excellent opportunity for our students. However, that being said, I am concerned about the cost of looking at our 24-25 budget, seeing as we just went through our referendum because we couldn't even pay our teachers and our staff. I think we made an agreement to our community not to increase and go crazy above and beyond. And so I think we need to be looking at avenues to pay for things that we need. That if we want to increase these avenues and these opportunities for our kids, we have to find the money. And we've gone around about like how to find money in the school district because it's not a whole lot of options there. So those are my just 2 cents on that.
All right, any other discussion? Go ahead, Anna.
I guess I'm inclined to support the addition of lacrosse as a sanctioned sport for our high school, given I guess the fact that I really value that our district offers diversity and choice, and this is another option for kids to be able to be healthy, be active, and be part of their school athletic system. I am a little concerned about the cost. I guess I'm happy to hear we can fund the first year with some carryover funding. But I guess I'm curious, what is the overall athletic budget? What is that? Do we know, Andy, what the total is, what this adds to the total amount of what we're funding for athletics? I'd just like to understand what the increase, what that differential is going to be.
It's fairly significant. I'm trying to remember off my top of my head. Brittany, do you remember that number? Otherwise, I can look it up.
It's probably about a 20% increase.
Yeah, I would say at least that. Now, a good portion of the money that's in the athletic budget actually comes from gate receipts, like I want to say close to half. Mm-hmm. So it kind of self-funds that way. And I would anticipate what's nice about doing it this way is that we'll have a feel for those gate receipts for this particular sport after the one-time money is invested. So for the second year, when we're building that into the budget, we'll know how much money that should bring in. Okay. But yeah, I was thinking your budget was $200,000 to $300,000 is the number that kind of was in my head, which I know is a bigger range than probably should be. But yeah, and about half of it, as I recall, is gate receipts.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
So, Andy, just to piggyback on that, then I'm understanding that the year one is considered seed money, so to speak, but then you would anticipate revenue to offset.
Yeah, because then we would have a real good idea going through an entire season what the revenue offset would be.
Okay, and again, not saying that all sports are equal in terms of their revenue, but do you have a sense of what an average across the board is offset? You know, what is offset by revenue? What might be an expectation?
I apologize. I haven't been to a lacrosse game, so I don't know what the population is. I will tell you that it's heavily weighted toward football and basketball in the past as higher spectator sports. But yeah, I would think, you know, we're probably talking a 5-10%, something like that would be just a guess.
And spectator numbers increase depending on the kind of level of competition. Correct. Too, as they get closer to tournament time, you see more spectators come out across the board. Special event nights, senior nights, things like that. You'll typically see a bigger crowd too. We are hosting one coming up in the end of May out here on Panther Stadium. If you want to come check it out.
I'd just add a couple things to that. I think as we move into this and to what Dr. Bergstrom was talking about, is we're starting to look at our athletic department as an athletic department. I mean, if you look at the college level, football is funding everything, right? When you look at UW, and I'm not talking about that here, but I'm saying is that, you know, we know what the gate receipts, you're never going to reach gate receipts in lacrosse that you reach in football and basketball. But we have to start looking at our athletic department as opportunities for our kids. We say our education is inside and outside the classroom, right? And so as we look at this, that's going to come to visioning in terms of as we look at these opportunities for kids, how are we going to afford them? And so having conversations with our booster club. It's been a long-standing history in this school district that kids don't pay for athletics. And if we want to continue that, we need to look at things and we have to prioritize things. And that means our students come first. And so we don't charge youth sports programs in this community to use our space. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but those are the things that we have to look at because we have to prioritize our kids and their educational opportunities, which we define as sports. And so it's really important for the board to have these conversations and move to visioning, but these are the kind of questions we're going to need to start asking because the state is still sitting on $7 billion, right? And so until that starts coming our way, we're going to have to start prioritizing and thinking creatively about how we fund things. But our first priority is always instruction and opportunity for our kids. So it's an important question, and we're starting those discussions because we're looking into the future. But I just want to remind people that that's, we define education here in a very broad sense, right? And these are opportunities that our kids are saying that they want. So, Troy.
Sorry, Brittany, I do have one more question. You didn't comment on it in the purple, but in terms of the management, two more new head coaches, two plus more teams, five more assistant head coaches. Is there any concern from your perspective as the athletic director in managing another sport with the staff that you have, you and Dave, and keeping up with educator effectiveness evaluations for our coaches and making sure that those teams are getting the support that they need? Or are there other costs that we will need to consider in the future?
Yeah, this is something Mr. Pleiner and I have talked about. It's something we both want. We are working as closely as we can with the club, but without kind of direct oversight of the program, it's hard for us to kind of put our little touch on it. So I would want to provide, access and opportunities for those coaches too, to kind of get what the rest of our coaches are getting here. So whether that's PD opportunities or just more emails from me, things like that. It is something I want. I want to be able to, see those kids in the hallway and kind of ask them, hey, how's your season going? And actually know more about it. Because I feel right now I'm a little bit on the outskirts just without being the one doing the scheduling and the stuff like that. So I can involve myself better in the programming too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that is an opportunity too to bring coaches into the fold in terms of if they're not school district staff, in terms of our equity training, safe sport, right? I mean, all those kind of things, which I think is what you're speaking to, that it's more comprehensive athletic department that you're leading. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. So do we have any sense whether the Booster Club would bring lacrosse into its one of its sports?
They actually already do.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
All right,
so
that's good
the
to know.
Boosters have a spot at the table for lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, and rugby, the club-sponsored sports here at OHS.
And how do you charge attendance for a lacrosse game? Is it within an enclosed field?
Yeah, so that would be something at the conference level that we'd probably decide. So there's certain sports within the Badger Conference that everybody has to charge, and then there's other ones where you can charge if your facilities allow. So baseball and softball, for example, are one where if your facility allows, you can. Well, we have an amazing facility where we could do it. However, nobody in the conference does, so we don't want to be that one school that is. But that could be an avenue where we explore in the future, and as long as we communicate it, I'm okay backing it. Lacrosse, I can see being one where we would charge admission because it is played, for us, it would be in a complex that we can, shut some gates on and force people through a single entry point.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison. Yes. Dr. Lakuta. Yes. Ms. Bijak.
Yes.
Dr. Bush.
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz.
Yes.
Ms. Wright.
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you to the Lacrosse Club. You all have done a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in terms of your kids in this opportunity. So thank you, and welcome to the Oregon School District Sports Department. All right, thank you. And we're not offended if you get up and leave now. Thank you, Brittany. Okay, moving on to action item 2, resolution to support DNR grant for the Oregon Area Splash Pad. Back to you, Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. And this one is actually in Mr. Weiland's territory, so I'm going to pass it to him.
Thank you. As you may know, we've been working on the splash pad concept with the Oregon Brooklyn Optimist Club for a number of years. We applied last year for a DNR recreational grant. There's either $4 or $5 million available in the entire state, so it's highly competitive. But they've actually funded splash pads in the last several years, like 3 or 4 years in a row. We missed it last year by a point or two. and have been working with the DNR consultant regarding our plan. It's actually kind of interesting. Access to water, outside water features is really, this is going to sound weird, we're in a desert. Everything's kind of to the north of us, Belleville is actually installing one a little bit right now, but it's fairly far away from us. If you look at the rest of the county, everything's pretty well covered. So we think we have a good shot at this. The Oregon Brooklyn Optimist Club basically put together the grant, but we are the owner of the property as well as the need to be a governmental entity to put forth the request from the DNR. So this is a resolution that they ask us to put together. It again expresses your support for the project, but it also does, more importantly, it allows me to sign for the grant and basically authorizes me to submit reimbursements for the grant if we were to be successful. So we should know that in about August or September of this year, based on the DNR's timeline. So are there any other questions?
Any questions for Andy? Go ahead, Anna.
This is stewardship funding grant, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the recreational component of it, where like active, I think that's the term, is it's the active component of it.
So I know that it does mean that that land always needs to be used for an active recreational purpose.
Correct. It's a very small piece of land and relative to other pieces of land for these types of things. But we could, if we needed to, ever down the road, because perpetuity is a long, long time, we could find another piece of land to add that to it in order to free up this piece of land if it was so important that we needed to do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Caleb, we'll go around this way and then up.
I decided I needed to ask a question before everybody beat me to the questions, because everybody asked good questions last time and I didn't get a chance to ask mine because they were all answered. So my question is, you said that we missed funding last year by a point or two. Do we know exactly why we missed funding by a point or two? I mean, is there something different from the resolution this year compared to the one last year?
So it's a competitive grant, and they actually redesigned the application a little bit. So we're kind of in a different world compared to where we were last year. There's a couple different areas that they added to it. So we missed it by a point or two from, I think Baraboo got it last year. So we feel really good about it. I would also say last year we put it together a little quicker than we would have liked to. So our narrative, I think, is a little bit better developed and that type of thing this year. So.
Okay, thank you.
Leslie, anything? Okay. Mary.
I don't have any clarifying questions. Thank you.
Heather.
Andy, can you speak to if there was anything else in the school district that we would apply for this type of grant for? And if it was, would it be, are we using our, one shot if we get this grant?
So Anna probably knows this. Things like the tennis courts might have been something, but I can tell you that there are so many tennis courts in the state of Wisconsin that there's no chance, in my opinion, that tennis courts would probably be funded. They're looking for something more unique than that, and that's why I think right now they've been funding splash pads. So just to clarify, Reedsburg, Beaver Dam, and Baraboo, I think in the last several years have all been funded. So
I appreciate that, and you're probably right that we aren't getting funded for a tennis court. I don't know how hard the grant application process is. I wonder or worry that if it's not a tennis court, what's coming down the pipe in 2 years that we may want to apply for? And just with your experience of what other school districts are doing besides the splash pad, are there other things that might be relevant to Oregon that we're using our grant opportunity for that?
I really feel like this is a good application for these funds. I will just share a bit of history with you, just a bit. J.C. Park East was actually years ago, I believe, developed with these types of funds. So the same provision that it has to be available in perpetuity for play is actually in place at J.C. Park East. So yeah, we've already, now that I think was in the 70s. I tried to find the application.
50 years.
Yes, so I think we're due, and I do, based on what is being funded in that grant, I think, you know, we've got a good application for it.
Troy, anything? Okay. No further discussion or clarifying questions, so if somebody want to put a motion on the floor.
I'll make the motion that we approve this resolution to support the DNR grant for the Oregon area splash pad.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, any discussion? I think, Mary, you had a discussion item.
I do have a discussion item. So if I read the purple correctly, we are going to need to find $140,000 in order to match, correct?
If the total cost of the project gets up to that $900,000 level, yeah, that would be the difference right now. The Oregon Optimists are well aware of that too, and they would obviously be working on that.
Okay, that was my question. Are they still fundraising actively?
Yeah, they are. They've got a couple different ideas of things that they want to do should this come forward, because then would be the final push. Just so FYI, I don't know if I put this in the agenda item, from a construction basis, we wouldn't be doing anything this year except probably working on the project. It would be next spring, summer that we'd actually start construction. So it's unfortunately probably another 2 years out before the splash pad would be usable.
And when do we find out whether we get the grant?
August or September.
Okay. And so then, obviously, you don't have a crystal ball. I don't expect you to. But let's just, for argument's sake, say that the Optimist Club fundraising falls short. Where would we be able to get $100,000?
Yeah, I mean, fund balance is always an option if that was requested of us. The other component of it is we could work on the cost side of the equation too, I think. Okay. And so we do have a couple ideas on that. Well, one specific idea on that. Okay. So we're kind of developing those ideas.
So then the goal would be to lower the because
it might be a combination, but that would be one option as well.
Okay. Yeah, my concern was just spending additional money for the exact reason that Leslie mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
I just want to follow up on that. My understanding is we are not on the hook at all to spend any additional funding, just to clarify that.
Correct. The project wouldn't, I mean, we're kind of saying that we're going to try, is what I put in the application, but if we did get the grant and we were significantly away from the amount of the project,
then the cost goes down.
Then the cost goes down, or we just say we're not going to do the project.
And then is there any penalty to
Not to my knowledge.
say no thank you to a grant?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my question too, that if we can get the grant, but the grant can be returned and it's not saying we're doing the project.
It's a reimbursement basis.
Yeah, got it.
So.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All good? Okay, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Andy. All right, moving on to approval of CISA 2 contract. I'll turn that back over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. And I think here we go. Dr. Widensee is coming up to talk about the services that are connected to our annual CISA 2 contract.
There, is that better? Like I said, I have the easiest job of the night. I have a contract with CISA that we do annually for audiology services. We have audiology services for our students with deaf and hard of hearing impairments, and the audiologist provides IEP meeting time. She does maintenance of equipment for us, consultative services, things like that. And we do have a funding source for it, so we are funded. Andy and I work together on the budget, and we have part of it coming from the IDEA grant and part of it from the district budget. So,
All right, any questions for Candace? We appreciate that you said that it was funded. Leslie?
I sensed a theme here. Yeah.
I'm glad you sense the theme. We're trying to be responsible to our community in that way. So we did not have the audiology on the CISA 2 contract this past year or this year?
We did.
Oh, we did. Okay. Can you speak to how many students, if that is staying, at a relatively, same amount, or if we're going up, seeing increases or in that need, or decreases, or where are we at?
Overall, our numbers of students with deaf or hard of hearing impairments has increased. The current contract reflects about the same number as we had last year, so we have some students that require audiology services and some that don't. And again, we have had an increase over the course of the last year, so it's sort of balanced out a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the contract. All right, Heather with the motion. Do we have a second? Sure. All right, Leslie with a second. Any further discussion? All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison? Yes. Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you,
Thank you
Dr.
very
Wiedense. All right, moving on to D, discussion items, committee reports. Just to announce, we have new committee structures with the changing of the board. So Anna will be leading vision steering, and on that committee with her will be Troy and Leslie, and then Heather will return as policy chair, and on that committee will be Caleb and Mary. So we will entertain our little committee reports, but it's probably going to be, when's the next meeting? So Heather, to you for policy. Oh, microphone.
We're going to get our group together and find our meeting cadence.
All right, great. And then Anna, vision steering.
The same thing as Heather.
Okay. All right, moving on to E, information items, visioning and strategic planning. Back to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. So just to revisit our framework, and the reason we put it out here continually is because it really does guide what we do on a day-to-day basis in the district. But in this particular instance, I'll also mention that Ms. Flanagan and I had an opportunity to present at the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators Conference, utilizing this framework, because we spoke about moving things from policy to practice, and specifically focused on equity and what that means to have a board that is putting together policies with that as one of our key values, and how that is a part of our portrait of a graduate, part of our 3-year strategic priorities, a part of our decision-making framework, and how it's also a commitment that's evident in our annual goals and action plans. So that was something that we spoke about with a small group of superintendents who came to hear a little bit more about the topic. And you'll be hearing more about it at the next meeting, which is also an opportunity for our district administrators to talk about the goals they have for their departments and how that fits into this broader framework. And of course, as part of the framework are the board's priorities. And that, I think that you'll hear a lot about that in 2 weeks when we are back here again. But I hope you also hear about these priorities every time we go through the superintendent's report at the end of a meeting. As a matter of fact, if you have the priorities out, it would be an interesting exercise to sort of tally up how many times in the superintendent's report we are sharing information that's in direct support of what the board has put together as their 3-year priorities. And now we have a teaching and learning update, and I'm going to ask, I believe, Darcy Krieger and Lindsay Engelhardt to come up and share some information with you.
Is it on now? Oh, okay, good. Okay, so I came to talk to you just a little bit about the ELA assessment plans for 4K and 5K next year, because the assessment that we used to use, that's we used in compliance with Wisconsin State Statute 118.016, has been discontinued. So we have been on a journey to find what the best, most appropriate assessment is for our 4Kers and 5Kers. And the reason I asked Lindsay to come with me tonight is because she's done an amazing job working with our 4K sites and really digging into what the assessments are that are available to us that meet all of the criteria that we need to meet to be in compliance, and also really give us a good snapshot of what our kids are capable of at that level.
Can we just have you tell what ELA is and what PAL is? Because we have people at home and they're probably not going to know what those are.
Yep. ELA is English Language Arts, so it's all the assessments in the suite that are included in English Language Arts. And PALS is an assessment that we were using that is an acronym, which education is full of, and it stands for Phonological Awareness Literacy Screener. Does that help? Thank you for asking that. So now we can go on to the next slide, because I wanted to give Lindsay the opportunity to talk about the assessments that we've looked at, and then the one that we chose for 4K and why.
Thank you. So we looked at two assessments that are by Renaissance, which is kind of bigger picture, the family of some other assessments we use at the upper grades. So we looked at STAR Early Literacy. That's what some of our younger students are using right now. That's a computer-based assessment, one-on-one with a device and a student. Some of the pros of that were students could, do it all together on their own, not a lot of teacher time involved. And then we also looked at My IGDs, and so My IGDs is kind of like what comes before STAR Early Literacy. And that program really is based more for preschoolers. And the alignment chart for standards was not super aligned to our WEMOS model, which is the standards that we use. They are looking at doing a revamp of My IGDs with the announcement of PALS going away. But that isn't going to be rolling out until late summer. And in an effort to give our teachers time to be ready for that adjustment, we just didn't think that was a great fit. So the one that we are going to be moving forward with is Gold from Teaching Strategies. And so Gold is very closely aligned to the Wisconsin literacy standards. And in 4K, we look at the WEMO standards, which is the Wisconsin model for early literacy standards. Gold is also conducted through observational data with a one-on-one setting or in a small group. So instead of it being computer-based, teachers are collecting data on students over the course of a period between the fall, winter, and spring data windows. The piece that really drew me was the fact that the assessment occurs in children's natural play-based environment. So we're not losing out on that instructional time, teaching the student how to use the iPad, to make sure the sound works, to go through the questions, but rather when they're at the sensory table or when they're playing Hi-Ho Cheerio or whatever they're doing in their environment, that teachers are able to collect that information. And then with Gold, it puts students on a progression from birth to 8 years old, which goes through 3rd grade. And that also models our 4K report card, which is a progression. It's important to know that there's a huge span of growth and development that happens during that time period. And so with that, Gold offers opportunities for teachers to enhance the curriculum for students that are maybe not aware widely held expectations are at, but also then gives them the strategies to push them forward so that they're meeting students' needs wherever they are at, because we know in 4K, the kids come to us with a whole wide range of skills.
Awesome. Thank you. And then we also, for kindergarten, because we used that PALS assessment in kindergarten, and in collaboration with our literacy coordinator. We have selected the STAR for early literacy for kindergarten, which meets the state statute and is a relatively quick screening assessment meant to take about 10 to 12 minutes to capture students in kindergarten's foundational skills capacity and then allow teachers the ability to drill down into the skills like vocabulary skills or language or reading skills. There are also Spanish versions of this, and it's aligned with the assessment suite, the English Language Arts Assessment Suite from 1 to 12 currently at this time.
All right, any questions? Go ahead, Anna.
Is the STAR for early literacy using an iPad, or is that?
It's computer-based.
It is computer-based. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
I have a question that is kind of relevant, but maybe not, and it can't be answered, but it made me think of the first grade reading. They were working through two different things, and I was curious. It made me think if we've selected one. I don't expect an answer now, but
we have.
I don't know if that's like shareable. But anyway, it just got me thinking about that because I know that was part of one of the
I will tell you, I was planning on, I'll tell you more about why we selected what we selected later, but I can't tell you since you asked me, I believe. Can I tell? This is very exciting. I'm excited too. Thank you. We selected EL education.
All right. Go ahead. You done? Good. Okay, Mary?
So do you have any concerns using a iPad or computer-based system for the assessment? That takes 10 minutes is what you said?
No, I don't have any concerns with this one, and we've done a lot of work and research with Kim to check, Kim White, who's our coordinator, to check into the validity of the assessment and the reliability, so I'm not concerned, and we'll be kind of leaning into some support from other teachers in the building to help make sure that we're giving it the amount of time and training that we need to get started.
Okay, so you wouldn't expect to see learners who spend more time on computers to excel at that versus?
We're actually gonna, this kindergarten first window is not gonna be until a little bit later in the fall, so that any of the skills that are prerequisites to be successful in the program will be taught explicitly.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Leslie.
So when you were talking about the wide range of learning at the 4K kindergarten level, I know that in kindergarten we do, but at the 4K level, do we offer like continuum supports like we do in the K-12?
Yep, absolutely. So part of our play-based approach is really setting students up for those experiences where they are able to have it modified by their teacher if they need it, and are also having that open-endedness to be able to extend their learning. And teachers are really great with building those relationships, so finding those interests in students so that then they can kind of target from one day to the next how to differentiate their experience.
And then do we, if we find a certain student has a concern on either end of the spectrum, do you partner with the school district, like Candace, and who do you partner with to get that student what they need?
Yep. So for students who may need additional support, we have a 4K instructional coach that I work very closely with. And then, of course, if we have a student that have some of those bigger concerns that may need to go to a referral for special education, then I work closely with our 4K case managers in Candace. For students who are on kind of that other side of the continuum, is really more based with me and the teacher. Specifically thinking about literacy, we have some students who are early readers in 4K, and so we set them up for success by doing an informal assessment and then sending books home at their just right level, and then working with their teachers at the site to think about how to push them forward on their learning depending on their reading ability. Yeah.
All right, any further questions? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Back to Dr. Bergstrom for the superintendent's report.
Well, actually, I have one
Double
more,
dose of
one
teaching and learning
more
tonight.
section under teaching and learning. John is excited to present to you tonight the results of our grade 6-8 math curriculum adoption.
Yeah, I have just a couple updates. I know you've been waiting in bated breath since February when we told you that we were going to have a decision later in the week. So actually, I have two updates. The other one is human growth and development, because we haven't talked about that for a while. We are done with our work. We're providing some context to it. We're going to talk to you or present that at the next board meeting. So expect that report at the next board meeting. And then math, we selected college preparatory mathematics, CPM. And so here, click the next slide, and you'll see, so it's basically we're down to two different curricula now in the district. So CPM was the decision that we made for grades 6 through 8. That's after the piloting process. A ton of people put a lot of work into this. So the new sequence is going to be 4K through 5 is going to be Bridges, and then 6 through 12 will be CPM. This meets some of the criteria that we had, one of which was to have a more unified experience with fewer transitions. Katie, can you just click through to the next, or whoever, I don't know who's it. Oh, Leslie's got it. Thank you. So, one of these was the alignment part with K-12. And so this is only one transition, and it has that alignment 6 through 12, which is actually really nice, especially because we have some students, who start taking algebra and geometry, which are CPM courses while they're in middle school. And so having that CPM continuation all the way through is great. Next one. And then next steps, basically right now we're in the process of ordering curricular materials, and we hope to have that done very soon. And we are training teachers starting this summer, and that is very exciting. We're actually hosting the training here on site, and part of the training, and we have options if people can't make it for that day, but we figured we're going to try to make it on site to make it as convenient for people as possible. They don't have to travel places, but there are 2 other on-site summer options if people can't make it the days that we have it here. But it was just the only time we could bring CPM trainers actually on site. And then throughout the year, they actually send a coach who actually she comes now twice a year to come and visit the classrooms and just offer non-evaluative feedback and coaching to teachers on how to use CPM, and she'll continue doing that next year with the new teachers as well, which is a great thing about CPM, that they actually send people on site to help with that. So we're going to be doing more implementation of it in the fall, and then on this timeline, basically it's the ongoing professional development throughout the year, and we're going to analyze how it's working and keep on monitoring it, and that's basically it.
Great. Thanks, John. Oh, sorry. Here's your evaluation, your pilot team.
I just put this in again as last time because these people put so much work into it, and they're wonderful folks that did a lot of work. So there you go.
All right. Thank you. All right. Now to Dr. Bergstrom for the superintendent report.
Now it is my turn. So last Friday was School Lunch Hero Day, and I know that everybody has been paying attention to some of the really amazing food that's being put out by our school lunch team, particularly when they're doing their Around the World Day food. I think the last one was Hawaii. Was it not? That was Canada. Oh, it was Hawaii, then Canada. That's right. There was some pineapple rice in there, but that wasn't Canada. Okay, so our team really does fantastic work for our students, and they do it with a lot of love in their heart. So many thanks to them. And also, many of you already know this, but this is the actual official Educator Appreciation Week. Many times people celebrate it or celebrated it last week, but it's supposed to be the first full week in May. Consequently, we're almost having 2 weeks of teacher appreciation, and I don't think anybody's upset about that because our teachers deserve every moment of it. Or educators, excuse me. And our district art show, congratulations to all the student artists who were recently honored for having an art piece in the Oregon School District Office art show. So you can see the pictures here are of students and families wandering through the district's main office to find their artwork and where it is displayed. And then we all gather in the Netherwood Gym, and the principals recognize the artists who have artwork on display at the main office or the district office. And it's really a fun thing because we get to see their artwork for the entire year. And it makes those of us who spend more time than we would like to in the district office just a little more happy. We also have some students from Forest Edge sharing, these are second grade students, sharing their pollinators and the information on pollinators with their families. And then here we have Netherwood measuring bubbles in math. What do you do when the weather doesn't cooperate? Well, Miss Esther's second grade class at Netherwood Knoll adapted by moving Bubble Day inside. So those are actual blow-up bubbles, like the kind you blow with soap, on their desk, and they're measuring them. So good for them. They made great use of their time in a bad weather day. Our Forest Edge Elementary multilingual students in grades 3 through 6 recently visited the UW-Madison Discovery Building and the whole campus. Students met with multilingual professors and scientists and engaged in hands-on science experiments. Many thanks to Ms. Springer and Ms. Painter for this learning experience for our students. And then the middle school, congratulations to the middle school students who recently participated in the Visioneer Design Challenge at UW-Milwaukee Peck School of Arts. The Visioneer Design Challenge is a unique statewide learning program and competition for middle and high school students interested in design arts and connecting with professional designers. Challenges have been developed by professional designers who currently work and have careers in current design fields. We have students compete in the following areas: animation, digital photography, fashion design, game design, graphic design, toy design, and urban planning. Thanks to Ms. Tui for supporting our students in this great event. And speaking of great events, last Friday was the OMS 7-0 Team Urban Challenge. And this has always been an extraordinarily fun trip. It's also the subject of our most recent podcast that'll come out on Thursday. I and many of us were lucky enough to be chaperones for the small groups who make their way around the city of Madison on a bus, on foot, engaging in lots of group challenges. And the goal isn't just to learn how to take a city bus. The goal is to learn how to work as a group with people who may or may not be your close friends, to problem solve together, to cooperate in a kind and productive manner, to learn how to do things that you've never done before and do them with your peers. The chaperones are there to make sure everybody stays safe, but we really do encourage the students to work together to make the decisions over the course of the day. Personally, I have an absolute blast when I spend the day with the 7th graders doing this. It is so much fun. And they are just fantastic young people, and I can't wait for them to take over the world. They'll be great. We also want to mention that our middle school is having something very special happen. There's actually a school forest, a very small swath of land that's right next to the middle school that is actually designated the middle school's school forest, and it has plenty of invasive species, buckthorn, honeysuckle. So what is being done is we are having goats on this land. They are coming next Sunday night. They'll be in the forest with an electrified fence around them to keep predators out and to keep them in. And every day, the owner of the goat will come back and move the fence so that the goats will get rid of the invasive species, and we'll just keep moving the fence around until the goats have cleared out the forest in a healthy and sustainable way. And then after that, our students will go out and will plant native plants after the goats are gone. So it'll take about 20 days. The forest is closed during this time period, and we have signs around the forest indicating it is closed, other than one open pathway for students to get through to school for those who cut through the area. And also the fence is also clearly labeled as a potential shock for anybody who touches it. So it will not hurt people, but it will not be a fun experience. So we want to make sure that the fence is very well labeled, and people who live in the area ensure that their pets stay away from the fence, and that their young children stay away from the fence. but this is a great sustainable way to clear the forest.
They even have their own URL.
Yes, they do. And that's many thanks to our genius communications director, as always, who has a whole web page of information for people, because we will be handing out letters to all the families whose property abuts the forest to make sure that they know what's happening and they have access to the go-to URL so they can read a little bit about this whole process. Next thing, congratulations to Maya Yadav, who's recently named a winner of the Jane Street Award from the Mathematical Association of America. Students earn this recognition based on their scores in the American Mathematics Competition. Listen to this. Maya is one of only 4 people in Wisconsin to have earned this recognition. So, way to go, Maya. And then we have the senior signing ceremony. So congratulations to our 20 student athletes who signed their letters of intent to play at the college level. The signing ceremony was held last week at the OHS Performing Arts Center and hosted by our athletic director, Brittany Spencer-Grant. And then congratulations to our 21 students who were recently celebrated during the Badger Conference Top Scholars Awards ceremony. We have a long list of names. You can see all of the wonderful students who are on the screen. We're very happy for them. Mr. Pliner was there to congratulate them. Britta Baldus, Quinton Bush, Will Cram, Sarah Dreyer, Amelia Dyer, Lindsay Engel, Marissa Grooms, Ezekiel Jeske, Alexa Yokman, Jack Kreckman, Jonathan Krieger, Maggie Langenol, Pierce Nelson, Gavin Rhodes, Ashton Ritter, and Abigail Sargent. Congratulations to our Badger Conference top scholars. And then we also, sorry, there's a page 2, and I do not want to read all of those names and not these 5, okay? Leo Schleck, Haley Siren, Alexa Stoffels, Miles Valiska, and Daria Vorontsov. Now, the next one, the Dane County Youth Apprenticeship Banquet. So congratulations to our seniors who recently participated in this banquet. Students took the time to thank their mentors for an amazing year of working, learning, growing, and preparing for the future after high school. And then the OHS greenhouse. Spring is in full bloom. So check out the beautiful plants that are started and cared for as part of Miss Beatty's Animals, Plants, and You class. In addition to providing a fantastic hands-on learning experience, the plants grown here are donated to the school gardens, area organizations, and are used for the retail experience. The students recently hosted a plant sale for the community, which offered a variety of flowers, vegetables, houseplants, herbs, and succulents. All proceeds go to support our ongoing partnership with the Oregon Area Food Pantry, Anderson Park Friends, and the Madison Area Food Pantry Garden. I just walked into Miss Beatty's class recently, and they were doing a Socratic seminar in talking about flooding conditions in a fictitious village, and they were working in small groups. It was an amazing, engaging activity. And then there were also chickens next door because we have so many animals associated with this program, in addition to a beautiful cockatiel in the middle of class too. So they're a very active group who take classes under Miss Beatty's leadership. And then Special Olympics had the regional track meet. So congratulations to all the athletes who completed in the Special Olympics regional track meet, which was held on Panther Stadium this past Saturday. We are so proud of our athletes, and thanks to the Oregon Police Department and student volunteers for making this event a real success. And then finally, as I mentioned, tune into the OSC podcast because you get to hear all about the Urban Challenge from the students who participated as well as the teachers who organized it.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to F, closing future agenda. As we mentioned, May 22nd is our next meeting. That will not be a normal meeting here in this room. That will be our annual board and administrative team workshop. So we'll have details for everybody about that. So that's what's coming up. Moving on to checkout. I will go around the horn. Mary, anything? No. Heather? Troy? Leslie? Caleb? Anna? All right. We will now move into closed session, so we'll start that at 8 on the dot. Thank you, everybody.
You know, are you actually good? Like, sometimes you don't even have to say anything to someone.